Hi, my name is Marissa Maloof, and I'm an attorney with the Immigration Law Office of Los Angeles. As some of you may know, my prior background is that I was a USCIS asylum officer. That means that I was on the other side of the desk actually adjudicating applications and conducting immigration interviews of non-citizens. So part of why I actually joined this firm is simply because I wanted to use my experience and knowledge as a government attorney and as a government officer to help immigrants, especially during this really scary time with the Trump administration. And I wanted to share some of that knowledge that I have with you today. So today I'm just going to go through a few tips that I have for your next USCIS officer interview. And these tips are going to be pretty vague, and they're not going to be really going into the law of anything, but they're just things that I found really helped cases get to a grant, and that I can say from my experience would make me more likely to grant or deny an application. So the first tip that I have is pretty simple, and that's to make it very clear how you're eligible for the form of relief. Now this sounds simple, but actually doing this can be a little more work. And this means making it clear as day so that way the officer doesn't have to do that much work to know that you're eligible. The officers are extremely overworked, which I think a lot of people don't really fully appreciate or understand. A lot of times they're doing 3 or 4 interviews in a day, and they're not really looking that much actually at your documents or your supporting documents. So you want to do their job for them, make their job as easy as possible, and make it so clear on the application and in any brief that you have exactly why you're eligible. There's nothing I hated more as an officer than getting an application that just checked the box but didn't explain actually why this person is eligible. And a related tip, my second tip, would be to make sure that if you are submitting a lot of documents, which generally is good, is to make those really easy to read for the officer. You want to have tabs, you want to have a table of contents, you want to actually highlight the important parts of your document. And you would be surprised how many people don't do that before their interviews, and actually how many attorneys won't do that in their submissions. So any submission you get from our office, you'll see is very thick, explains it clearly, and is highlighted, tabbed, and tried to make as easy to read as possible for the USCIS officer, just because I know how much as an officer I hated getting a huge stack of papers with no idea where the relevant documents were. So that'd be the first 2 that are probably, I'd say, the 2 most important. The third would also be to prepare for your interview, which also sounds like a simple thing to do, but really it's just key to go through everything that you're going to be talking about at that interview, and to make sure that you remember everything. When I was an asylum officer, it was very common that people would come in and, they had what happened to them maybe happened 5 or 10 years ago, and they would not remember the important details. So it's important to really have that in mind when you go in, so it will be an easier interview. And again, if you were to work with our law office, we would make sure that you were prepared and go through all of that with you probably several times before your immigration interview. And a fourth tip, which is a really, really minor thing, is to be consistent in the name that you use. And I say this is a really USCIS maybe insider tip. The more names that you have on your application, for instance, let's say your name is Jonathan, but you also go by John. When you're signing that application, sign Jonathan, because the more different names that you're using, the longer your case is going to take to process, because actually the USCIS officer has to kind of go through each of those names. I won't get too far into that, but that's just, a small tip that can make it a little bit easier for the officer and can make your case be processed faster, which is generally good. And then now moving to when you're actually at the interview, my fourth tip on this would be to make sure that you answer only the question asked. Now this, again, sounds simple, but you would be surprised as a USCIS officer how many times I would ask a simple yes or no question and get some long response. So for one, just answering what the USCIS officer asked is going to make them happy. But for two, it's actually usually better for your case. You want to prepare, you want to know everything that you're going to say, and you want to make sure that you're not going too far into things that may even hurt your case. So only answer what is asked. They'll be grateful for it, and also your attorney will be grateful for it too. And in the end, you'll be grateful for it because you'll have had a better interview. The fifth thing that I would add for your interview is to be aware of what may be inconsistent in your case and to have in mind what you're going to say to that. This goes back to preparation and refreshing your memory, but it's really important that you know when you go in there that, there may be certain inconsistencies. And it's actually the USCIS officer's job and duty. They have to ask you about those inconsistencies, maybe between your declaration and your visa application, for instance, when you came into the United States. These are things they have to ask about. So it's really important that you know what to say in those instances and that you're prepared for it, and that you also just understand that that's going to be a part of the interview and don't take it defensively. And the sixth, I would say, which I hope everyone would do, is to be polite and say thank you and understand that it's just their job. For me, dealing with a pleasant applicant versus a difficult applicant made a huge difference in my day. I would like to think that, it never really impacted my adjudications. But human nature is that if you're dealing with with someone who is being more pleasant to you and who is being respectful of your time, you're just going to have a better impression of the case as a whole, I think. So those would be my 6 tips. I may have added a bonus in there, not quite sure. But if you're interested in having us work on your case and having us help you prepare for your USCIS interview and get your application prepared, please do give us a call. The phone number is 800-792-9889. Again, that's 800-792-9889, and we would love to help you. Thanks.